So in this video, we're going to be talking about some of the ramifications and consequences of the long and successful reign of Kaiser Augustus. One of the things that you should be asking yourself is this: the Romans demonstrated a extreme aversion to the idea of one-man rule when they cast out the Tarquins. And so it's still kind of shocking to think about the idea that 500 years later they fully embrace the idea of Augustus having complete control over the Roman world. So what is the difference? Why does it become acceptable for there to be a rejection of the idea of king that is so intrinsic to the Roman identity that the very idea that Caesar was aiming at being king was one of the things that led to his assassination. The rumor that he was angling toward being Rex was a part of the final moments of his rule as dictator. And yet, within a very brief period of time, we have his successor assuming unquestioned and with adulation, one-man rule of the Roman state. What is the difference between Rex and Princeps? And this is the key question, because Rex, a king, is a magistrate. The Rex, the king, any king is a government office. It is a constitutional government office in which a set of responsibilities is invested in the office itself, and the expectations and duties of that office belongs to the office irregardless of who is occupying it. It is the office that has preeminence, and this is the thing that caused problems for the Romans. It caused problems 500 years before, when that office was being abused by a person that wasn't worthy of it, namely Tarquin Superbus. And it causes problems 500 years later, when the magistracy that replaced it, the consulship, was not being occupied by people that were worthy of it in the eyes of the populares, and consequently, because the populares are successful, in the eyes of the people. In the transition from king to republic, essentially what happens is the consul replaces the king as chief magistrate. So what does that mean? That means that the magistracy of the king is divided in two, between two people, and limited to 1 year. And the control of the state religion that the Rex had as a priest king is taken away from it. It's essentially the same office as the king, but divided in two, limited to 1 year, and restricted in what it is able to do. It is the same kind of office. It is the same kind of position and authority. And so the consuls are a continuation of the kings, reshaped in a way to try to eliminate the abuse of that authority that Tarquin had represented. The consulship and the kingship are both state offices, government offices. The princeps, that consists of the powers and responsibilities being invested in a person without government office. And so Augustus remains a private individual. For all intents and purposes, he's given the power of the consulship without the office of consul. And other people are consuls under Augustus and end up being administrators on Augustus's behalf. Augustus has the authority of a consul, has the imperium maius, the supreme ability to compel. But without the office of consul. He has the powers of the plebeian tribune without the office of plebeian tribune. He has the powers of a censor without the office of censor. He is simply the man whom the people and the masses trust and depend upon even more importantly, and increasingly depend upon to hold the Roman Empire together and to ensure its strength and safety. And the longer Augustus remains in power, the longer this works. Another question you might be asking: how is Augustus different from Julius Caesar? Julius Caesar holds a republican office as dictator. He mangles it and mutates it, but he is persisting republican offices. The other major difference, though, and this is more in a practical sense, this is vitally important. Julius Caesar ruled only on behalf of two of the three major constituencies of the Roman polity, which is to say, he acted on behalf of the people and the legions, but was hostile and abusive to the nobility. And so, therefore, his rule as dictator was inherently divisive, and this brought about his downfall. Augustus, as princeps, must rule with the understanding that his constituencies are the people, the legions, and the nobles, and he must act on behalf of all three for Rome to be strong and for the empire to be strong. And this is part of the secret of Augustus's success. This is part of what it means to be princeps. A princeps is somebody who has the responsibilities and duties to hold Rome and the Roman Empire together on behalf of these three constituencies: the people, the legions, and the nobility. As Augustus continues to rule, the problems develop out of the success of his reign, which is to say, as he continues to rule for decade after decade, and this rule is immensely stable and prosperous, and the Romans grow accustomed to relying upon Augustus to hold everything together. The result is that the Romans and in the city, in the provinces throughout the Roman world, become inured and accustomed to the idea of depending upon Augustus, and this becomes the way to do it, because this is what works. And the Republic was falling apart. The Republic devolved into civil war. The Republic was a failure. Julius Caesar's dictatorship was a failure because it was divisive. Augustus is what works, and it works tremendously well. So how do you perpetuate that? Because it's based on the rule of a particular person. It's based on the personality of Augustus and the trust and faith that's invested in Augustus as a man. And so we have this ironic situation where they've developed the populares are successful. Augustus is the last of the populares, and they've done it. They've achieved their goal. But now, what do you do to continue this and make it continue to be successful? Another problem is that we've talked in the past about how the legions have started to develop a separate identity as they ensconce themselves in the provinces, as they serve longer and longer tenures within the legions. It becomes customary for people to be in the legions instead of being in the legions for a single campaign, which was the way it was in the beginning of the Republic. You'd serve in the legion for a single campaign for 3 months, and then you'd be discharged and you return to your farms. By this time, to be in the legions is to be a career, and you serve for 8 or 16 years. And you often, these legions are stationed in the provinces, and you end up settling in the provinces and taking a local wife and essentially becoming part of that place. But more importantly, your the kind of army that we have here is no longer tied to lands and properties in Rome and central Italy. They are tied to their legion, their focus, their sense of identity. Their visual focus is the eagle, and their sense of identity is the legion. The eagle has immense mystical properties, especially for the legionnaires. When the eagles are invented by Marius, it's with the eye toward having a religious symbol that is a focus for the strength of the legion, for the legions to unite and cohere behind that icon. The eagles become an artifact that channels the passion of the legion, and that interacts with the benevolence of the gods in order to bring about victory. The loss of the three eagles at Battle of Teutoburg Forest is immensely symbolic, but more than that, because these are so strikingly important, Augustus sees the loss of the eagles as just as ominous and detrimental as the loss of the legions themselves, and the problem of incompetent generalship with Varus. The singular identity of the legions now means that they are not strongly connected to Rome, and therefore, with their identity focused on their legion and their camp, their eagle, and inevitably on whichever general is in command of them. And this is the other reason why Augustus turns to members of the imperial family as his most important generals from this time onward. The loyalty of the legions needs to be ensured. During Augustus's time, this is not a tremendous problem, because Augustus is immensely popular amongst the legions as as Caesar, as the heir of Caesar, and as essentially the manifestation of everything that Caesar represented. He's immensely popular with all the legions, but the legions need to be kept happy and their loyalty ensured, because if anything were to happen, the legion is a tool that can be wielded against Rome, as Julius Caesar himself ably demonstrated. And so the necessity of ensuring the loyalty of the legions, this is primarily ensured with pay and privileges. Unfortunately, this sets a bad precedent, because after Augustus, the loyalty of the legions means that they have to be paid. They expect to get at least as generous treatment under Augustus's successors as under Augustus himself. And so the legion becomes this independent focus of power within the Roman Empire, which is of immense, potentially damaging import should anything bad happen. But the main problem for Augustus is how to continue what it is that he has, to make persistent the stability and strength that he brings through his own person. How do you do that? Well, this is not the first time. Caesar is the direct successor to Marius. Octavian Augustus is the direct successor to Caesar. These are individuals that are chosen to be the personal heir of the leader of the populares and the popular hero, regardless of any other consideration. In other words, the method that becomes important, the method of perpetuating this process, is to bequeath his role as a private citizen within the Roman world to somebody that is adopted as his heir that is worthy of it. This is the Roman principle of adoption being purposed for the continuation of a family name, just as it has always been. This time the family name is Caesar Augustus. And so the principle of adoption becomes the means by which the office continues. This was originally going to be passed, through any number of people. The first choice that Augustus has is Marcus Agrippa, who is his admiral, the architect of Actium, and the most important general in the years afterwards. Toward this end, he marries Marcus Agrippa to his only child, his daughter Julia. And as a result, they have several children that become important later on, after Marcus Agrippa has died and is unable to become Julius Caesar's heir. And so after this, Augustus continues to look to members of, people within the immediate nobility that he's somewhat connected to, that are worthy of taking up his position, whom he can adopt. And some of them actually are adopted, including eventually his grandsons through Julia and Agrippa. These also die before he does. Some of these men who were to become his potential successors die under mysterious circumstances, and this is not the place to discuss that, because there's a great deal of volatility amongst historians about what exactly happened. But the point is that Augustus rules for so long that he outlives all of his choices for who can succeed him. In the end, he's forced to choose somebody that he doesn't like, but who is nonetheless worthy, his stepson Tiberius. Who is still alive when he is in his last years of office, and who has demonstrated immense ability as commander along the German front, and as administrator in Rome, and so forth. Tiberius is a scholar and a general, and a man of strong disposition. Augustus just doesn't happen to like him, but what matters here is that the position that Augustus has is part of his personal property, and he needs to find an inheritor, another citizen who he can pass this along to. So he adopts Tiberius. Tiberius becomes the next Caesar Augustus. The name is perpetuated, just as the name is perpetuated in the principle of Roman adoption throughout Roman history, as a means of ensuring that the Princeps is somebody who is worthy of the responsibility and faith and trust that comes with it. And so one of the things that Augustus seems to foresee is the problem of what does it mean to be Princeps. And so when he summarizes his rule in the res gestae, the acts of the divine Augustus, which are inscribed upon his tomb, the acts of the divine Augustus, the res gestae, are not just a boasting of all the things he's accomplished. It is a blueprint of what it is that an Augustus does. And this is meant to be a script and a model for those who come after him. This is the most important purpose. Of course, it fixes him in this paramount position, and this is unavoidable, because he has this immense power. He's been ruling for decades. He is the single pillar of the Roman system. And so, this aggrandizes him above all others. The function that this represents is that those who come after him must do the same kinds of things in order for the Roman Empire to survive. And so he lists the kinds of things that he did, the kinds of things that Augustus does. The other thing to mention here is that the role played by Augustus's wife Livia, who is here at the end and continues to be important afterward. She is as the mother of Tiberius, but the thing about Livia is that throughout Augustus's reign, for all of these decades, Livia, with the title of Augusta, is side by side with the Augustus, and is accomplishing, has, rule over the Roman Empire is too much for any one man. And Augustus essentially shares his authority with Livia in a way that is immensely profitable for the Roman Empire. What essentially happens is that Augustus takes care of all the public functions, and Livia accomplishes a great number of things behind the scenes, and is responsible for monitoring the actions of the nobility, and finding out things that are happening beyond the public space. They work together in order to ensure the stable and coherent world of Rome, and to act against those who are antithetical to it, secretly or otherwise, within the elites, and this is immensely effective. So, as you think of Augustus as a name that is passed on, Augusta is also a name and a responsibility that is also passed on, and the role that Livia plays as a counterpoint to Augustus, as somebody that works with him, and he's able to discuss things in bed. And later they publish sort of sanitized versions of their pillow talk, as a way of spreading the things that Augustus is thinking about. Augustus is able to represent a point of view that is complementary to Augustus, and that is very useful for the effectiveness of the Principate. When Augustus finally dies, he is made a minor god amongst the Roman pantheon, just as his adoptive father Julius Caesar had done. There's a great story about this, in which the pyre of Augustus had built into it a cage which contained an eagle. And so what was supposed to happen was, as the pyre was taking flame, the gate to the cage was to be opened by some centurion, who was in charge of this, and the eagle released, and it would be coming out of the pyre, and from the point of view of the spectators, it would look like the soul of Augustus ascending into heaven, apotheosis. What happened in the event was that the door of the cage got stuck, and the eagle starts to scream as the flames rise up around it, and the centurion has to climb up to the pyre and manually open the gate and grab the eagle and throw it up into the air. And so everybody sees that the eagle's planted in the pyre. It becomes it becomes a joke. It becomes more than this, though. It's representative of how the role that Augustus played is something that was made by his hands. It wasn't given to him by the gods. It's talked about in any number of ways, from ridicule to amusement to praise. But to us, it's very representative of the fact that Augustus was known to have accomplished everything that he did with the benevolence of the gospel, with the force of will that came from him, and with the energy and action of his own hands. So, with the death of Augustus, then comes the actual transition. We'll talk more about Tiberius next week. The main thing to say here is that whoever succeeds Augustus is not going to be able to live up to him, and Tiberius simply does not have the charisma that Augustus has. He has the capability, and he has a very, very dry wit, which he uses in dealing with the Senate, as the Senate approaches him with cautious skepticism, knowing that Tiberius himself doesn't want this job, and that Tiberius is no Augustus. The histories tend to represent him as somebody who falls short of Augustus, and who is not as honorable as Augustus. He falls short not only in terms of in terms of his ability as Princeps, but also in terms of morality, simply because nobody could possibly live up to the divine Augustus. As I said, Tiberius is immensely capable, but he does things his own way, and this causes problems. And so the thing to bear in mind, therefore, is that the histories that are written about him, such as you see in this passage of Tacitus, you see the comprehensive sense of everything that Augustus accomplished, and Augustus dies, and then the next sentence in Tacitus is the first crime of the new regime. And this is an indication of the hostility that exaggerates and skews our portrait of Tiberius. And so, as you look at Tiberius, you need to look at not only the stories that are told about him, but the way in which those stories are told, and the inevitable comparisons with his predecessor. The other thing to say about Augustus is that Augustus transforms the city of Rome and the culture of Rome. The city of Rome is rebuilt in a way that corresponds to the splendor of Roman rule. Augustus is known to have said, "Rome came to me in brick, and I left it in marble." And so, the city of Rome becomes a world capital after years of being an outlying backwater, even at the heart of this immense empire. And much of this is modeled on Greek influence, but the influence that transforms Rome is dependent upon the entirety of the Roman world, and reflects all of the different cultures and techniques that have become a part of it. Likewise, Roman culture. Roman culture is elevated to be worthy of being the core of the entire Mediterranean world, even though the cultures that are now part of the Roman Empire are Egypt and Greece and so forth are much, much older than Rome. Roman cultures is the synthesis of all these things, and this has been going on for a couple of centuries in the late Republic. But Augustus actively works to bring this evolution about through patronage of the arts, through encouragement of drama and sculpture and painting and rhetoric and history, poetry, literature of all kinds. Augustus is bringing about the apotheosis of Roman culture. This is not turning it Greek, because as has always been the case, the Romans take the techniques and technology that the Greeks develop, whether it's architecture or philosophy or theater or epic poetry. They take the technology and techniques and use it to say Roman things, and very often in Latin. The Greek language becomes a second language for all educated Romans, and this is proof that you are educated, because culture begins with with Homer, the Odyssey and the Iliad, throughout the Hellenistic world, and therefore throughout the Roman Empire. So your education begins with studying of Greek and studying of Homer. Another of the famous sayings of Augustus is "A turnip may know no Greek, but I do." That which is to say that he's an educated, intelligent man. Uh, Greek is expected among educated men, but the Romans speak Latin, and they create art in Latin as well as in Greek, and their art is expression of Roman ideas. Their philosophy is expression of Roman ideas. Their literature, their theater, their sculpture, all expression of Roman ideas, using the techniques of the cultures that they have absorbed. And so we see this in quite a number of things that are fostered in the reign of Augustus. We see a number of playwrights like Horace. The secular hymn here we have is a celebration. It belongs to a particular event, which is the Lude Saculares, which is a celebration that is done only once every 110 years. It's designed to express joy and adulation at the end of one year and the beginning of another. So this is very important for Augustus to have held these games. A large amount of art is fostered for this, including the secular hymn, which is in celebration of the event itself. And it contains a great amount of praise for Augustus and everything he's accomplished. But this is part propaganda and part demonstration of how Rome has passed beyond this trial, this tumult, this teething period of the civil wars, has finally emerged as truly great. And this is one of the things that that people have genuine gratitude to Augustus for. And so part of this is, Augustus is all powerful, and so he has to be praised. And part of this is, Augustus is champion and savior, and people are honestly grateful for that. Also we have selections here from Catullus. Catullus is writing lyric poetry that is like Horace, representative of the personal point of view rather than epic poetry, which is representative of champions and heroes. Catullus is particularly personal. His poetry has been compared to Sappho, and in fact some of his poetry is modeled on Sappho. But Catullus also inspires other writers, including Ovid and Virgil, two of the other most important writers of this period. Virgil, in particular, creating the archetypical story of the Augustan era, which is the Aeneid. It creates a whole new origin story for the Romans that reinforces a Roman identity separate from and complementary to the Greeks. They're descended from the Trojans, who had fought against the Greeks in the Trojan War, through Aeneas, who escaped from the disaster of Troy. So this is epic poetry modeled after Iliad and Odyssey, modeled after the Homeric Greek model, but it is that simply means that it is a technique, a writing technology that is used to say Roman things, and so we have poetry, we have theater. Also during this period, we have Livy, who you've had excerpts from. Livy, the historian, is writing the history of Rome from the priestly records, going all the way back to the time of kings, year by year, and telling how Rome has evolved, how it has come to this point, and it's gone through the terrible times the war with the Samnites and the near disaster of the conflict with Hannibal. It's nearly torn apart through civil war, and finally has come to this point of fruition. It has gone through a trial by fire and is now up to the Romans themselves to live up to this new elevated form. It is now up to the Romans to live up to the world that Augustus has created for it. And that's where we find ourselves when we are living in a world without Augustus, which we'll be talking about next week. And until then, that's that.